Hey YouTube, it's Nick, and it is a new video today all about Purgatory. So Purgatory was developed by the Catholic Church in the 12th century and has gone through a lot of changes over the years. So today's video, what I'm going to do is basically talk briefly about Purgatory in the Catholic religion, how it is impacted in other religions, the modifications that have happened, and in my opinion, how spiritualism and purgatory kind of go hand in hand and meet to kind of develop what the ghostly plane truly is. So as I said before, purgatory was developed and written about first in the 12th century. Purgatory has a general concept that people that were not baptized and were not in a good relationship with God and had vain tendencies, but hadn't sinned enough to go directly to hell, were sent to purgatory. And purgatory was a place of inner fire and development and change and growth towards God, where you would have to pay atonement and get through unfinished and undeveloped spirituality in order to move on to either heaven or hell, depending on where your belief system kind of placed you. One of the things that was recently overturned with Pope Benedict was limbo. And limbo was a section basically of purgatory, or the section before hell, that was reserved specifically for unbaptized babies. So if a child passed away and was stillborn and wasn't baptized or died before they were baptized, they would enter limbo because they weren't able to grow that relationship with God. They weren't able to make the changes necessary in order to move to heaven. So they were stuck in limbo. This went on for about 800 years, this belief and practice, specifically in limbo. And the Catholic Church, as I stated, recently overturned it and said that limbo does not exist anymore. Purgatory, on the other hand, was a place that got people to pray for family members or friends or people that they knew that didn't have a relationship with God and didn't have spirituality with God. And because of that, they were trapped in this place that basically was just suffering without torture or without damnation. It was a place where they were meant to reflect on themselves and build this relationship with God and ask for forgiveness and ask to be able to be invited into heaven. And here's where spiritualism and purgatory kind of mesh. So if we think about ghost stories and we think about what we know about the spiritual world, what we know about EVPs and what we know about spirit box sessions, a lot of the times when you're speaking with a spirit, it's due to unfinished business. It's due to things that are keeping them on this plane. Now, in my belief, and you don't have to share in this, you don't have to feel the same way, but in my belief, this purgatory is basically the in-between before you've moved from this life and crossed over into whatever else awaits on the other side. That's why I believe it's harder to get in touch with certain spirits. If you have family members that you don't feel them anymore, when somebody dies, you have that feeling if they're there or not. You have that feeling of their presence because everybody has that specific feel to them. Like, you know when somebody's there or you know when somebody's coming. If you stop having that feeling, it probably means that that person's crossed over. Purgatory to me is a place where you have this unfinished business. You have these things that are keeping you tied down to this plane, and the suffering that they talk about in this, and that inner turmoil and development is trying to battle those demons in that sense to move on and cross over. And in this case, it's if you have this unfinished business and this desire to stay with your family and this desire to stay where you are, that you don't believe that you're dead yet. That inner development, that inner turmoil comes from the fact that you can't communicate with those people that you love. You can't physically interact with things the way that you did when you were alive. And because of this, you have to reflect on the fact that you are no longer living. You are dead. And you have to move on from this point. You have to show growth and development and realize, your life as you knew it is over. And I think that a lot of spirits struggle with this concept because they don't realize that they're dead, and they don't realize that, things are still moving on. And there's a lot of different material talking about how, they may be stuck in a specific frame of time in their mind. But if you think about it, when we have interactions with spirits, whether it's through an EMF, whether it's through dowsing rods, whether it's through whatever method, you are still communicating with a spirit. So they have to be acknowledging your presence in some way, which makes me question, can they really get stuck in this loop of time? Or do they then, in this purgatory, have to watch their loved ones grow old and eventually pass away, to watch the world change around them and not be able to interact the way that they used to be? Now, there are exceptions to this rule. Mediums, for example, have the ability to speak with the dead, have the ability to communicate with people on this plane. These devices that we use, whether it's a EMF detector, whether it is an EVP recording, however it may be, you are still interacting, but not in a way that is like this, where it's speech, continuous conversation. Now, a lot of religions have this concept where you either have to continually pray for ancestors for them not to suffer in a specific plane of existence, or you have to make offerings to family members who have passed so that way they can move forward with their life. In every religion that I can think of, there is some form of this. There is some form of transition from death. Purgatory just kind of clicks best with the ghostly plane because you are in that stage of, I am stuck and I need to move on. I need to reflect on myself and continue on from there. Some of the major religions like Buddhism, Islam, Christianity, Judaism all have this sort of plane of existence after death where it's before you move into your final resting. Even if we take into consideration the Egyptian methodology of this, like ancient Egyptian, there's a judgment that occurs, but there's a path to get to that judgment. There's always a path. There's always a way, a direction that you have to go in order to get to that final stage of being. Even if you consider reincarnation, you have to move from one life into another life. And in that interim, things can happen, especially if you have unfinished business. And that's what's discussed in a lot of these cases. If you have unfinished business, it can keep you in a certain plane. As we've talked about before with dreams, I believe that is a certain medium where we can interact with people that are in this purgatory stage, where you can have thoughts of people that have passed and people can communicate through that. So there are a lot of different beliefs about purgatory, but in my own personal opinion, I believe that purgatory is just that in-between stage before you've crossed over into whatever else is next. So if it's heaven, if it's hell, if it's reincarnation, if it is a blissful whatever you believe in. I think that this in-between is where we have most of our interaction with spirits. Now, do I believe that it is impossible to ever communicate with those that have passed over into this next plane of existence? I don't think that's the case. And I have my own personal reasons for feeling that way, and eventually I will share those with you. But I think that we can still communicate with those that have passed over. I believe that the communication is just a little bit more difficult. Kind of think of it as the ghosts that are in Purgatory are kind of still in the same area code vicinity as you, but you're making a long distance call if they've crossed over. That's, again, my personal opinion. You guys can think whatever you want. I'm just putting it out there on the internet. Funny enough, for those of you that enjoyed Ghost Whisperer or television shows kind of along those lines, one of the terms that you'll probably hear a lot is earthbound spirits. In my opinion, that's that purgatory location. And I don't know if she would agree with me on this, and you are more than welcome to ask her, because just giving her a quick shout out in this video, Mary Ann Winkowski, who is the person that Ghost Whisperer was based off of, actually has a YouTube channel, and I'll link her down below. She posts every Wednesday, just like I do, or try to do. Sometimes these videos end up kind of sliding into Thursday depending on how long it takes me to edit. She answers questions that people have, and I myself have even sent her letters and have responses. So one of her books is over here. I also have a book by James Van Praagh that's over there. My recommendation is, if you really want to learn more about earthbound spirits, if you really want to learn more about kind of my perspective of what a purgatory plane is, I would recommend checking out her videos and just giving them a watch and feeling free to shoot her a message and get your questions answered, because she is one of those spiritualists that I would very much say I agree with a ton of what she says. So it's definitely somebody that I would recommend giving a watch to. So guys, this week's video is actually going to be pretty short, just because I wanted to not touch too much on the history of Purgatory, but to at least give you guys an overview of Purgatory, what the Catholic and Christian belief is, and then my perspective and 2 cents on it. I hope you enjoyed this video. Again, I know it was really short this week, but I have a lot of content that's coming up that I'm really excited about, and again, I would always and forever appreciate any likes, shares, subscriptions if you're not already subscribed, and comments letting me know what you would like to see in the future, or if you have any sort of opinions on what I've said in this video. Please feel free to let me know what you think about the possibility of Purgatory being a spirit-bound earth plane of existence. Alright. Y'all have a happy Wednesday, and if it's Thursday, happy Thursday. Talk to you guys soon.